Hey everyone, Jessica O'Garr, clinical psychologist from the Psychologist.com, doing another schema mode video for you today, and we are doing self-aggrandiser mode. So this is another one of the fight strategies. It's around an overcompensation strategy for the vulnerable child, the function of which is to present a facade of grandeur. Look how good I am, believing themselves to be the best at everything, believing themselves to be deserving of special attention, and believing themselves to be above the law and beyond the rules. If those rules don't apply to me because I'm amazing, don't you know? All right. There can be, look, this is, in terms of all the schema modes, this is the one that taps in most closely to narcissistic personality disorder. And the thing you need to remember is that some people know that the self-aggrandiser mode is bullshit. Some people know that they are doing it as a facade and that they are covering their underlying vulnerability. Some people will argue to the ends of the earth that they are just that good and there's no possible thing for me to feel vulnerable about because I'm amazing, don't you know? Right? In terms of the schemas, obvious one, entitlement. I think there's also an attention seeking schema in here, and for some of them there's an insufficient self-control because they just can't keep their mouths shut when it's appropriate and have a need to keep bragging and showing off and overcompensating for the vulnerabilities. Underlying that, there's probably some schemas around defectiveness, failure, and abandonment. Some sense that the vulnerable, because you've got to remember, vulnerable child's at the middle of all of this, right? So the self-aggrandiser being a coping mode as a way of overcompensating for the vulnerability, there's got to be some sort of vulnerability under there. The question is whether or not does the person recognize that vulnerability or not. Okay, so there are certain people that you may come across who know that it's all an act and are able to use that act. They're able to contextualize that act and use it in certain circumstances to show off, to perform a role or to fulfill a function, but know the true selves. And then there's other people who will swear black and blue that they are God's gift to this earth and there's no possible thing that they could be flawed at. Any former sitting presidents may come to mind here. But they strongly believe that they are as special as they show off. Okay. Now, I have heard across some of the schema therapy work that I've done in the past and other supervisors that I've engaged with on this sort of thing is usually we talk about the vulnerable child being at the center of everything. With narcissism, the self-aggrandiser sort of compensatory modes, sometimes it may actually be more beneficial and clinically accurate that instead of conceptualizing a vulnerable child, to instead see a lonely child, right? So some people kind of find the lonely child is a better way of understanding how the narcissism develops. So I've seen this go one of two ways, right? This could be the lonely child in kind of a child who is left to their own devices, a child who has a lot of emotional deprivation, a child who is basically ignored. Or what I've also seen in my patients where there's been NPD is they had helicopter parents. They had the, who's my special little boy? Yes, you are. You're amazing. You can never do anything wrong. You're God's gift to this earth and I'm so proud of you and mummy's so happy with you. That what they learn is I'm amazing and I do everything right and I get gold stars on everything. And even when I don't get gold stars on my homework, oh, well, it was the teacher's problem because they don't understand how special you are. So I see kind of the two different of either completely neglected, so they just make themselves out to be amazing to compensate, or they're told their whole life that they're amazing, so they just continue on with that pattern. So the awareness, what we're going to see, showing off, bragging, always wanting to show themselves in their best light. We will see a denial of faults. We'll see a strong defensiveness if any faults are kind of brought to life, or a deflection away from any of the faults, but look how good I am over here. The ideas of I'm special, kind of the rules don't apply to me, look how good I am. As I said, some of them may have an awareness that it is all an act, but not all of them will, all right? In terms of why this is maladaptive, because it's bullshit. It's all a show, right? Most of us standing back can look back at it and go, you're really not as good as you think you are because we can see all of these things that you do wrong. Again, they may not always be able to see it. Where you have that superficial kind of showing off and engagement with others, you may find that you have fans, but you don't have friends. You have people who may be intimidated by you. You may have people who look up to you. You may have people who aspire to be you, but there's no authenticity to that. There's no friendship to that because there's no kind of deep level of connection on that, right? And for those of you who know that the self-aggrandizer is actually an act, it's exhausting to keep up that level of to be able to showing off and to always be perfect and to always look that way. We see a lot of this with celebrities and social media. When they're in the limelight, they can have hair and makeup done and the perfect outfit and everything looks amazing, but behind the scenes, everything's falling apart. Okay? The crossover, they can flip into bully attacked if they feel that they're under threat, right? And I'm going to do that video next, so hit subscribe and watch that one when we release it, okay? In terms of needs, it's attachment and connection with someone who can provide you with a safe space for you to actually have the courage, wait for that to go past, have the courage to be authentic, right? Particularly for those people who recognize that self-aggrandize is just an act. If you can connect with someone who can meaningfully see that the self-aggrandizer is an act, but underneath is a scared or lonely or vulnerable child, and connect there, you are going to have so much more meaningful connections. But you need that safety, and you need that permission to actually be the real you, knowing that someone's not going to reject you because you haven't lived up to this facade that you've portrayed, okay? In terms of the healthy adult, it's practicing authenticity. It's having kind of the willingness and the capacity and kind of a radical acceptance to know you're not perfect at everything, and to also know it's okay. You don't have to be perfect at everything. You don't have to be the best at everything. No one is. And really, we like you more when we see the authentic flaws, as opposed to this person who puts himself up on a pedestal that looks down on the rest of us, all right? So it's freedom. The healthy adult wants to really inspire a sense of freedom for you to be able to show the real you, to create some meaningful connections. How can others help? So if you know someone who is a self-aggrandizer, first of all, you've got to figure out whether or not they know that they're a self-aggrandizer and it's all an act, or whether they truly believe themselves to just be that awesome. Because what you need to be able to do is to see what lies beneath, but you've got to tread really carefully here, right? Because if you call someone out on their self-aggrandizing and they don't have the capacity to handle it, they will probably flip into bully attack and they will take you down with them. Alternatively, if you are able to see kind of, look, I see the real you and you don't have to show off all the time, you don't have to be perfect all the time, and I love you anyway, then we can actually get some meaningful connection going. So it's setting boundaries of, hey, I kind of see you showing off right now and that's really not helpful to our relationship, but treading very carefully in the way in which you go about that, because the narcissistic defense, the self-aggrandizer mechanism, is a very fragile mechanism or coping mode with a very thin facade, with usually a great big chunk of vulnerability underneath it. So tread carefully. Okay, that's all I've got for self-aggrandizer today. Stay tuned and hit subscribe for our next one coming up on bully attack, and I'll see you next time. Thanks everyone. Bye.